Welcome to this explainer on the Ultimate Biological Command Center. Today, we're diving straight into Chapter 18, Neural Control and Coordination. We're going to completely unpack how your body pulls off its incredible feats of synchronization, taking all that complex anatomy and turning it into a clear, visual journey.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 1, the need for coordination, 2, mapping the neural system, 3, anatomy of a neuron, 4, firing the nerve impulse, 5, crossing the synaptic left, and wrapping up with 6, the central command center. We're starting big, zooming way down to the microscopic level, and then building all the way back up to the brain. Let's get into it.
All right, Section 1, the need for coordination, syncing the body.
Think about the last time you went for a run. The second you start jogging, your body has to instantly sync up your skeletal muscles, expand your lungs, and tell your heart to pump faster to get that oxygen flowing, right? It's not just one organ doing its own thing. It's this massive, complex orchestra playing perfectly on beat. And when you stop, everything just naturally chills out and goes back to normal. So how is that flawless timing even possible?
Well, that functional harmony happens through coordination. It's what keeps our body in homeostasis, that perfectly stable internal state. Now, our bodies actually tag team this job. You've got the endocrine system, which uses chemical hormones, and then you've got the neural system, which is what we're focusing on today. This is an organized network of point-to-point connections built for incredibly fast, rapid-fire coordination.
Which brings us to Section 2, mapping the neural system, CNS versus PNS.
So the whole human neural network actually splits pretty elegantly into two main parts. On one side, we have the central neural system, or the CNS, which is just your brain and your spinal cord. Think of this as your main headquarters for processing and control. On the other side, you've got the peripheral neural system, the PNS. This is essentially the vast wiring network that hooks up that central processor to the rest of your tissues and organs.
And that peripheral system? It divides its nerve fibers up based on which way they're going and what they're doing. You have afferent fibers. These act like messengers, transmitting sensory impulses from your tissues up to the CNS. Then you have efferent fibers, which send the actual commands back out. It's also split functionally. It routes voluntary commands, like moving your arm, to your skeletal muscles through the somatic neural system. Meanwhile, all the automated stuff going to your vital organs, stuff you don't even have to think about, is handled by the autonomic neural system, which is constantly balancing between sympathetic and parasympathetic states.
Moving right along to Section 3, anatomy of a neuron, the microscopic unit.
Now we're zooming way in on the excitable building block of this whole network. Take a look at the structure. See those short, branch-like things? Those are the dendrites, and they act like antennas receiving signals. Then you've got the central cell body right there in the middle, packed with cytoplasm and typical organelles. And finally, that single, long fiber trailing off, that's the axon, which transmits nerve impulses away to the next stop, like a synapse or a muscle junction.
But neurons aren't a one-size-fits-all deal. They actually adapt their specific anatomical jobs and come in 3 main structural types. First, there are multipolar neurons. These have one axon and multiple dendrites, and you'll find them packed in your cerebral cortex. Then you have bipolar neurons, which just have one axon and one dendrite. These are super specialized for capturing light in the retina of your eye. And lastly, unipolar neurons, which literally just have a cell body and a single axon. You usually only see these during the embryonic stage.
Now, for the really cool part. Section 4, firing the nerve impulse, creating the spark.
So how exactly does a biological signal shoot down that long axon fiber at lightning speed? Well, we have to look at what happens when the neuron is just resting. The axonal membrane sits in this polarized electrical state. Basically, it's maintaining an electrical charge difference using an active transport mechanism, specifically the sodium-potassium pump. For every 3 sodium ions it literally pumps out of the cell, it pulls 2 potassium ions back in. This setup creates a positive charge on the outside surface and a negative charge on the inside. It's like a coiled spring, just waiting.
And then bam! A stimulus arrives and that resting state is completely shattered. Sodium channels instantly fly open, causing a massive, rapid influx of sodium ions right into the cell. This actually reverses the polarity. Suddenly the outside is negative and the inside is positive. We call this reversal depolarization, and that sudden electrical shift, that is the action potential. That's the actual nerve impulse. And literally a split second later, potassium diffuses back out to reset the whole membrane so it's ready for the next signal.
When you look at this, you can see exactly how the electrical current flows sequentially from site A to site B. Because the membrane polarity flipped at site A, a current flows on the inner surface right towards site B. At the exact same time, a current flows on the outer surface from B back to A to complete the circuit. It's literally propelling the signal forward along the length of the axon like this continuous, incredibly fast electrical wave.
But what happens at the end of the line? Section 5, crossing the synaptic cleft, mind the gap.
Once that wave hits the bulb-like end of the axon, it actually faces a gap before it can get to the next cell. These junctions are called synapses, and they basically come in two flavors. At electrical synapses, the cell membranes are in such close proximity that the electrical current just flows directly from one neuron to the next. It's super fast, but honestly, it's pretty rare in the human system. The vast majority are chemical synapses. Here, the pre- and postsynaptic neurons are separated by a tiny, fluid-filled microscopic gap known as the synaptic cleft.
So, at a chemical synapse, that arriving electrical impulse hits the terminal and forces these little synaptic vesicles to fuse with the plasma membrane. They literally dump a bunch of chemicals, neurotransmitters, right into the gap. These transmitters drift across the cleft, lock onto specific receptors on the receiving membrane, and that opens up ion channels to spark a brand new electrical potential in the next cell. It's like a perfectly timed chemical relay race.
Which brings us to the grand finale. Section 6, the central command center, the human brain.
Let's zoom all the way back out to the big picture. All those billions of firing neurons and bridging synapses, they ultimately report right here to the body's supreme processor. Safely locked inside the hard skull and wrapped in 3 protective layers of cranial meninges, the dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater, the human brain is the ultimate command and control system. And architecturally, it's split into 3 main regions: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain.
Now, functionally, each of these regions has some distinctly specialized roles. The forebrain is your powerhouse for things like complex thought, memory, and even temperature control. The midbrain acts as a sort of hub, integrating visual and auditory sensory inputs. And the hindbrain? It connects directly to your spinal cord and runs all those critical, behind-the-scenes survival mechanics. We're talking respiration, cardiovascular reflexes, basically keeping you balanced and alive without you ever having to think about it.
If we focus deeply on that massive forebrain for a second, we find the cerebrum, which is split into a left and right hemisphere that talk to each other through a tract called the corpus callosum. The outer layer is the cerebral cortex, that highly folded gray matter that essentially makes us intelligent, handling all our sensory, motor, and association functions. Right beneath that, the hypothalamus and the limbic system are teaming up to regulate our body temperature, our basic urges like eating and drinking, and really our most fundamental human emotions and motivations.
So, bringing this all back full circle to where we started, that simple act of going for a run relies entirely on millions of these tiny sensory impulses rushing through your peripheral nervous system up to your brain, and perfectly timed motor signals rushing back out to your muscles. It is the absolute ultimate display of elegant cellular harmony.
As we wrap up this explainer on Chapter 18, it's just wild to realize that every single breath you take, every thought you have, and every movement you make is governed by this incredible microscopic cascade. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder today. Knowing the sheer, mind-blowing complexity of the 86 billion neurons firing off inside your skull right this very second, what are you going to coordinate next? Thanks so much for exploring this with me.